It's a familiar name, but is this player still flying for Michigan? Talk with Matt Wenzel of MLive about that and a whole lot more.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Spartan friends, Spartan family, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans. Your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube if you have anything to say about this or any questions for future shows, of course. And hey, with future questions, lockedonspartans@gmail.com is the best place to find us. We are joined by the one, the only Matt Wenzel. He somehow agreed to come back on this show. So thank you very much, Mr. Wenzel, for your time right now. But we're going to kick things off with talking about guys that are under the radar. We've been hearing a lot about, different players in just 1 week of camp, whether it's some wide receivers, whether it's guys in the secondary. But speaking of guys in the secondary, there's one name that I heard through the grapevine that's actually flying under the radar at camp, but it's a name a lot of us know. I've been hearing good things about Chuck Brantley here so far. Now, we've been talking on the show that, okay, he could very well be starting on the 2 deep as a backup because they have Chance Rucker, who showed up really well as a true freshman last year. Ed Woods, the transfer from Arizona State. But, Matt, I know you guys only have limited windows of watching these guys at practice. Have you been hearing anything about one Charles Brantley, or are you going to take us in a different place with names that are under the radar so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that Brantley's name comes up as an under the radar guy because he was,
right.
He started as a true freshman. Obviously, everybody remembers the pick against Michigan, career highlight for him. But he's a guy who spent time in the portal. He played only 3 games last year, and it just seemed like it moved on without him. Everything just kind of rolled on. Chance Rucker, the last year, was Jim Salgado, I think it was, that said, had it not been for a little minor injury Rucker had, he would have been game 1 starter, which is a telling thing to say for a true freshman, obviously. But where he fits, I mean, Ed Woods is the name that keeps coming up. Again, this is we don't get to see live reps. We get to watch mostly stretching and some little indie work for the most part. But Woods is a guy that comes in. I think he, I'd be surprised if he isn't a starter. But again, who knows what those battles are like. We talked to Joe Rossi the other day, and, basically it was asked him, like, you got 4 starters, you lost Mangum, but you got 4 starters from last year coming back to the secondary. And he said, well, good on them for starting last year, but this is a new team, new defense. And we're evaluating everyone, saying, one day, you got a guy with the 1s and the next day he's with the 3s and all that. So it's really hard to figure out what this is going to look like. But Woods, I guess, is an under-the-radar guy throughout there just because I think with all the turnover, I mean, even the fans have a hard time remembering who's on this team. I have a hard time remembering who's on this team.
Yes.
Day one in camp, you're looking at the roster and you're like, I don't even remember. Oh, yeah, this guy. Oh, yeah, I forgot all about him. So he would be one. Nakai Martinez is another guy that, again, not like he isn't an established player. He was a starter last year at UCF. Sure. But again, he's unknown to most Michigan State fans, I think. And he was brought up. They did what was that, Monday? They did some. I think Jonathan Smith said about 24 live snaps, and he had an interception during that period. I think we saw it all splashed on social media, but a good pick. But a couple of those are just 2 guys that I would say. When you look at who they brought in transfers, I always like. Not to say this is set in stone, but there's like 2 groups. You got the guys who are established, have starting experience, maybe 1 year, 2 years left. And then you have your guys who, those are depth pieces. They maybe just redshirted last year in their first year, and they're going to take some time. But Martinez and Woods are the guys that I would put up right up at the top. They have starting experience in their own programs and moved across the country for a shot at Michigan State. And I think those are 2 guys to definitely watch in the secondary.
I like how you broke those up into 2 groups because, I mean, that's quite simply how it is. Guys that are ready to, contribute immediately. And guys that, okay, younger, they really haven't shown anything in college. You're hoping that they blossom into something one day. And that's another name that I heard, too, is actually a guy like in the middle of those 2 groups. Ben Roberts, big worm, former 4-star out of Oregon. He's played less than 40 defensive snaps in his college career. So, really it's untapped potential. It's one of those guys that you're hoping can show something. But I mean, even just this week in practice with the media availability, all the quotes that you saw on Twitter or the articles, like Ben Roberts is a guy that on and off the record is impressing people. So that's another one for the defense. Is that another guy that you're hearing about too?
Yeah. I was watching a little bit of the defensive line guys. It was the last time we were outside, so last week. But that's just a position that is so up in the air because you lose obviously Harmon and Barrow, and spring that was a common talking point. We think we're going to be really strong in the middle, point of attack, and then you're left with only 2 scholarship returners at tackle, and Maverick Hansen, who's back for his 6th year, and Alex Van Sumeren, who, former 4-star kid, and he played as a true freshman, and then, missed all of last season due to injury. He was brought up by Jonathan the other day saying, he's a great example for the team. He's a guy who, battled through a serious injury, came back, and he was talking about how he made a play in practice and how excited he was in the backfield. So, Hansen, I think we know what we have there. Van Sumeren still a little bit uncertain. You got the coaching staff watching his high school highlights for a little bit of a grasp on him. Right. That's maybe not ideal, but you mentioned Ben Roberts. He was brought up. You got Jalen Satchel. Daquan Dowse came in the winter. So, I mean, there's a group there. How is that going to work out snap-wise? How much is a drop-off between, this guy? But I think we've seen in recent years, they think that D-tackle is going to be a strength. They said the same thing last year. And then for the most part, the transfers they brought in were non-factors. There's injuries. And next thing you know, you got a walk-on offensive lineman playing very, very important snaps at D-tackle on the road and probably not ideal. So, figure out that depth and stay healthy. So that'll be a very interesting position to watch.
Yeah. Good call. We always love a good Ben Nelson drop on this show here. That's the 4 walk-on that you're talking about. Held his own too, and he's a massive human being too. So we're not just going to write him off suddenly. But if you want under the radar, that's right. Yeah. Come here for Locked On Spartans. We're dropping Ben Nelson on here, baby. So
he was. Who knows? Last year, it was during the post-game press conference, it was the week after press conference. I'd asked something about it, and Harlan Barnett was like, "Say his name, come on, give the guy some credit."
Let's go.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, that's a hell of a position to be put in, in that, given the situation. But they need that group to come together, and it's interesting because these guys, your Maverick Hansens, this is his 3rd head coach. And he's had what?
Yeah, right.
Four defensive line coaches: Ron Burton, Marco Coleman, Dyron Reynolds. And now Lange. And then you have Chad Will on the Eds. But I mean, it's just been. I may have missed somebody in there too because it was obviously a fluid situation. But lots of different coaching techniques for them to absorb. A guy like Maverick. So we'll see how that comes together.
I want to talk about another very familiar name here on the other side of this, but man, I'm so sorry I got to send you to the bench because I need to talk to people's ears off about Gametime, my favorite ticketing app out there. Guys, there's plenty of reasons to love Gametime. If you know me, I love saving a buck or two, and Gametime is here to help out with that with their flash deals throughout the week. Let's say that you're going to go to a Tigers game in 2 or 3 weeks, but you don't have the tickets. Even that far out, open up the Gametime app. Look to see what you got. And what am I doing? Talk about Tigers. Michigan State football is on the horizon. Go ahead for kickoff against Florida Atlantic. Open up your app. You could already find great deals, great seats right now. Or let's say that you just wake up on that sunny Friday and you're catching the vibe. You weren't planning on going to the game, but my goodness gracious, I got work off. Let's go do it. But is it too late to buy tickets and save? No, it's not. Not with Gametime. Their last-minute ticket deals also let you save up until kickoff, even a little after kickoff. This is not one of the apps that shut down sales right when it starts. They bleed it into the game a little bit, which is very nice of them. So it's all about saving money over at Gametime with ease, and they make saving money easy right off the bat. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime. It's last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Before getting the one, the only Matt Wenzel of MLive back in the mix here. Thank you so much for making Locked On Spartans your first listen every single day. Now go make Locked On College Football your second listen with Spencer McLaughlin. He's going to get you up to speed with discussions on, conference realignment, the landscape of college athletics, the transfer portal, NIL, and the games that are about to start. Locked On College Football with our guy Spencer McLaughlin of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Matt, Cal Haladay has been around since seemingly the Mark D'Antonio days. It might not even be seemingly. I'm starting to lose track of how long this guy has been here. But 3 years in a row, he's been the leading tackler. And I think I'm part of the problem with this, but I feel like he is not flying under the radar necessarily, but maybe being a little discounted here of what he can do. Because, yes, it's been well storied last year. He was really exposed for his lack of pass coverage ability, okay? That doesn't necessarily mean he's like damaged goods or completely useless out there. On top of that, he's also lost, 10 to 15 pounds, he's saying. I think last week he said that he's feeling trimmer, lighter. Now, I don't expect him to, stick on guys like he's prime Darqueze Dennard or anything, but even this late in his career, do you think that there could be another step up for him? Or is he just is what he is at this point? It's hard to say with Cal Haladay, especially a guy that's been here for this long, has been the same player, so to speak, for this long in his career too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say never say never. Who knows? You got a new D coordinator, new position coach. I was the same guy in Joe Rossi, which he didn't have. It was just all Scotty before that. So, with Cal, I think he will draw ire of fans for, like you said, struggling in pass coverage. But that's on the scheme, I think, more than anything. If a guy struggles in a certain area and you keep asking him to do the same damn thing, well, whose fault is that?
Sure.
I like Cal. I think he's, I think Michigan State fans that might want to criticize Cal, remember who you got here. This is a guy who, he was recruited by Mark D'Antonio. He comes in during the pandemic craziness. He's just kind of, he's a blue collar kid from, farming family and no portal, no drama, no missed games. He's got a club on his hand, whatever. He goes out there and plays, a ton of snaps, tackle. What you got in him. He's going to be, a pretty good tackler. He's got a great knack for the ball in the end zone. 3 career defensive touchdowns, which I believe is tied for the most in program history. Yeah. Peach Bowl legend, of course. I just never went into the portal. None of that drama. He just shows up and plays football. Smart kid. He graduated with a chemistry degree, I believe. So I think like Rossi said, you need to fit the scheme to your personnel, which I know is coach speak. But use your guys how they with what they can do. If you there are even times where Cal was good in pass coverage and just was it the game at Washington? I think there was a wheel route. He was right on whoever it was, and it's just perfect play. So use him well, use him in the scheme that highlights his talents, and I think he'll thrive like he has before. He's, like you said, leading tackler 3 years in a row. That's been a guy they've been able to rely on week in, week out. Tough kid, and this is last year for him. So he's kind of a throwback these days, I think, in the modern era of college football. I would say Cal, fits that mold. But again, to the point of how he's.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say to the point of the pass coverage thing. I think it was back in spring we asked him, and he said he thinks the scheme will solve that problem. And look at the personnel now; they got a really deep room, a lot of different skill sets. You can use guys. They're talking about Cal, like look at last year, with Windman and Brule out, with Windman out and Snow unavailable. It's basically Haladay, Brule, and Jordan Hall playing like all the snaps. And now they're thinking, can spread it out, keep guys fresh, and make it to the end of the season a lot healthier. So we'll see how the new additions, a guy like Wayne Matthews or Jordan Turner. Jordan Turner's more of that Mike guy like Cal, kind of downhill a little bit bigger, and Matthews a little bit more on the, a little bit. He looks like he'll be a guy they'll rely on in pass coverage as a linebacker.
like with linebackers in college too, like I'm a little sympathetic and I feel a little bad because like linebackers that struggle in pass coverage are a dime a dozen in college. Like there's a ton across the nation that struggle with it. It's almost like, looking for a stretch four in basketball. Everyone just loves a stretch four. Oh, just go ahead and pluck one out. Like, it's not just so easy to just find a linebacker that's good in pass coverage. However, to tie that in with what you were just saying, they got Wayne Matthews. That's going to help greatly. Hopefully that does fit the scheme. And yes, Joe Rossi, he's been saying that he fits the scheme around his players' strengths. Of course, that's coach speak, but he's also shown it in Minnesota. He's very fluid with that. So hopefully this is going to help. Hopefully it's going to mean a good walk-off for Cal Haladay. I still think he's a fan favorite and everything. Don't get me wrong, but, hopefully we saw a lot of tough times for him last year. Just like you said, man, the guy was playing seemingly 500 snaps a game at the very end. I mean, who knows if he's nursing any injuries? He wouldn't tell anyone if he was. But yeah, Cal Haladay, not a guy that's talked about enough. And I wonder whose fault that is. Maybe the guy who talks about this team 5 days a week for a living. So sorry about that, but I'm glad we were able to, shine some light on the only Cal Haladay. And tying in linebackers, just how they're stacking up, because we just saw on Monday, okay, Jordan Hall, he's practicing with the rush edge position. Hey, maybe that just makes sense. Him at a rush for some downs. You get those other three talented linebackers behind him. Of course, Jordan Turner, Cal Haladay, and Wayne Matthews. Like, that's been a fascinating depth chart, I guess battle is what we'll call it, to watch. In your opinion, though, what is your favorite depth chart battle to watch? Because I feel like if we ask all different media members, they're all going to have different answers. So what's your number one that you're watching for?
Offensive line. We'll just go right back to the wheelhouse. It's just,
love it.
I think because, I mean, you have one full-time regular starter coming back. You bring in Tanner Miller. Yep. He's going to be your center. You got, what you got there. You bring in Luke Newman. But, that's it. That's it. I mean, like, you don't really know beyond that. Newman's was an FCS All-American tackle at Holy Cross, but now they're working him at guard. He got center snaps the other day. I'm really interested to see how that group's going to shake out. Jim Mahalchek, we haven't talked to him in fall camp yet, but back in the spring, basically, I don't think he brought up a single player's name. Like, he wasn't going to give you anything.
Wow.
And,
okay.
Unless he was asked by somebody, he didn't bring up anybody by name. He wasn't going to talk standouts or anything like that. But how that group comes together is going to be really fascinating, because they don't have, clearly finding a starting five is going to be interesting, but what's beyond that is really a question, because you have a lot of young guys.
Yeah.
A guy like Andrew Dennis, who comes in, he's still a true freshman and he's already transferred. So, but highly talented, very athletic, 4-star kid out of Mount Pleasant. Where does he fit in the mix? Does he, can he crack the rotation? Stanton Ramel, I always forget how to pronounce that, former 4-star tackle from Alabama, missed all of last season due to injury. He's out there, he's contributing. So I don't know. I'll just be fascinated to see how that line develops, if it can be more effective than we saw in recent years, because obviously that's been a problem for Michigan State. And then just what the depth's going to be like, and can these guys stay healthy and yada, yada. So the offensive line is definitely a key to look at.
I know some listeners are a little sick of me talking about the offensive line and how I'm just worried about it because of lack of depth. So that brings me a little solace knowing that there's at least one other Matt out there that also has that circled as a concern. Like, I'm not just freaking out for no reason. Like, that is stern. So, but we'll wait and see how it works out. And we've also been going with Stanton Rommel, but I'm also the last person that you should ask about pronunciation. So, if anything, you should probably fade that and say Ramel or I don't know. Or just Big R. Stanton R is probably the way that we can go about that now.
I'm pretty poor on pronunciations myself, unless it's somebody that forces me to really dig down, like Ma Nao Teote. I got that one, but he's not around anymore. But yeah, I struggle with that. I stumble over it. So either way.
I'm never thrilled to see a kid leave a program, of course, but I wasn't too heartbreaking to see Ma'a leave. And then to see a guy named Ben Roberts come into the program, I was like, all right, this is more my speed. We can do this all day. All right, there we go. So, not the strong suit here on Locked On Spartans. Sorry about that, guys. But to keep it to the off of the ball here, you just did a piece recently, 2 keys for the offense to start clicking. Now, of course, MLive, you got to subscribe. So if you don't want to give away both keys or either keys, I'll leave this up to you. But just your thoughts on the offense here. What do you want to see right off the bat to know that, okay, maybe things are going to work as early as year one under this new regime?
Yeah, that was Brian Lindgren, the new offensive coordinator, QB's coach, was asked about that on Monday. And he said basically that, everybody tends to look at like the skill positions, which, I mean, this is going to include one, but he said that, the best offenses he's been around, it's when you have a good offensive line and a quarterback who's playing at a high level, making good decisions. That's also some coach speak, because you'll hear that plenty. But, again, sure, like I pointed out, those have not been Michigan State's strengths in recent years. The offensive line, it did not come together under the previous staff. For whatever reason, I don't know. Everybody liked Chris Kapilovic. He's at Alabama now, which tells you something. But it didn't click, and it wasn't doing well at the end of the D'Antonio era. So, aside from the 2021 season, with few of you guys probably remember Kenneth Walker, that was it. And then ties into the quarterback play. They had poor quarterback play mostly under Tucker. Other than the 2021 season, when you got Walker and three future NFL wide receivers out there, an NFL type. Yeah, that is an amazing thing when you look at the 2022 season. Yeah, Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman, and you're struggling to put up point. So anywho, yeah, it's quite amazing in some respects, but. Yeah, I mean, if the offensive line and the quarterback are playing well, then obviously everything is made easier. So we already talked some O-line. So I mean, Aiden Childs, obviously, I don't think. How do we go? What are we? 21 minutes in, and now Aiden Childs is coming up for the first time. That's
we deserve some award. Yeah, no, that's good work by us. We'll make sure that we get him in the first 3 minutes in tomorrow's show. Don't you worry, folks. We will do it.
But yeah, I mean, how's he gonna do? I mean, he's got all the hype, and everybody is excited to see what they get. But again, you remember he's 18 years old still. He took 100 snaps last year. But, they were important snaps, a lot of them, because he was playing typically just, the third series. And so that was in some contested games. And you look at his stat line, was it 4 touchdown passes, no picks, ran for, I think, 3 scores. He was efficient. Now, how does he translate that to being the starter? And, he spoke ad nauseum about it and saying, oh, whatever. He's at times saying he doesn't feel any pressure. Then 1 minute saying, well, he welcomes the pressure. I mean, it's what do you expect? It's an 18-year-old kid.
Sure.
So how is he going to do? And, how does he rebound from when you do make that mistake? You get picked, whatever. How are you going to handle that when you're not going back to the bench and DJ's coming in like it would have been? It's you,
right.
And how he handles adversity at a young age in a new, in a new setting, because, there are more eyeballs on Michigan State in the Big Ten than there were at Oregon State. I think that's, it goes without saying. So if Childs can, I mean, nobody's expecting him to go out there and win the Heisman Trophy this year. If you are, good luck. But, how can he bring some stability to the offense? Can he make this offense, somewhat of a threat? Because, I mean, last year, I mean, it is amazing how bad that offense was last year. And I know there were a lot of things that went into that, the off-field stuff, but good Lord, that was something to watch. So can you get this team back to being a little more dynamic, a threat, put up some points? Everybody's saying they're going to, but that's what you say in the summer before you actually get on the field.
That offense last year is the reason that this little bottle here got emptied very quick into the season last year. That was my good friend. Last Saturday was last year. In more, less problematic terms, actually. Just any other big storylines from fall camp? We're only 8 days in. I only got one other one that we haven't brought up yet. I just want to bounce it off you. Monday's practice was moved inside due to rain. Matt, is the program getting soft? Is that a concern? Because, oh boy, come on, we got to practice in weather here. I'm only like 95% joking on that. So, but other than that, any other big storylines from fall camp so far?
Well, I will say the rain thing, it was not like a little sprinkle. There were big thunderstorms coming through the area. It was pouring. So, reason to go inside.
Okay. All right.
I imagine that if they get some sprinkles, over the course of the rest of fall camp, that they will probably just weather that inside. But big storylines. Wide receiver. I mean, I can go up and down the roster, but wide receiver. What's that going to look like? Montori had a good year last year, but he didn't. That was with poor, shaky at best quarterback play and not much of a run game to say the least. I thought his numbers were really good considering, he hadn't performed at that level before. He hadn't been asked to. And remember, this is a guy, he didn't play high school football until his varsity football until his senior year. He's a basketball player. So he's still relatively young, if you can say that about a fifth-year guy, in growing. So if you can get some more established target or threats out there, because they didn't really have many last year. Jerron Glover, and I'm sure nobody's heard of Nick Marsh, were two guys that Jonathan Smith brought up the other day as being two receivers. Yeah, as having really good summers and putting themselves in a position to, be up, right there. So Marsh, I think everybody knows about. He gives them some size. I was watching him run drill the other day. And it's like, geez, this guy's built. Very athletic. So how quickly can he make that leap to, there's more, being a reliable blocker, being able to do everything where they can keep him on the field and show his talents. And then a guy like Glover, he's a third-year guy, if I remember right. He flashed here and there, but, it's kind of time to produce. Antonio Gates Jr., where's he going to be at? Some of these guys, they need more vertical threats to show up, quite frankly, and see what kind of steps Montori can take, because, he had a big year and came back for another, last one.
There's just one more thing that I want to get to. This happened sometime last week, and we haven't gotten to it yet. It's Mel Tucker suing the school, claiming a bunch of whole things, racial discrimination, which, I'm not going to be a person that says that never happens in the world. Of course it happens, certainly, but I just have a hard time believing it, with Alan Haller being the guy that fired him ultimately. Anyway, that could be a different discussion. I just want to bounce this off you. I just need another adult in the room just to kind of check me on this to make sure I'm doing a fine enough job, and I don't need to take a hard look in the mirror. But the reason we haven't brought it up until now is because Matt, quite frankly, I don't care. I don't care anymore. I'm so burnt out over this. I think a lot of State fans are burnt out over this. Am I just a bad podcaster, a bad fan, a bad person in general, or is this fine if we're just still not talking about this? 11 months later?
Yeah. No, that's completely understandable, because everybody, the fans would just want to move on. The program wants to move on, and that's,
right.
The thing is, this doesn't have any effect on the current football team. Jonathan Smith has nothing to do with this. Players have nothing to do with it. This is all for the lawyers and Michigan State administration. I guess my reaction would only be, I'm surprised it took this long for a lawsuit to actually be filed, but this was an inevitable. It was inevitable. When you think, of course, you were wrong, when you think you were treated unfairly, and there was $80 million, and there's $80 million on the line, of course you're gonna sue. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but it's basically the lawsuit was making a lot of just the same points that were brought up back in the fall. He wasn't, Michigan State acted outside the parameters that were set up. He had a consensual, all that stuff was expected. The racial discrimination thing in the lawsuit was basically saying other, white coaches that were, questioned in some of the ways they handled things. They pointed to, you guys, will remember this, the ESPN store thing with Izzo and Dan. I'm just saying it's in the lawsuit, sure. And saying that, D'Antonio and Izzo were some. There were things like that, and then they, kind of accused the trustees and general counsel of kind of being in cahoots and behind the scenes. Anyways, big mess. So how long is it going to take to settle? I don't know. Do either sides want to get to discovery? Does Michigan State care what it would show, or are they going to take a hard line just saying you're not getting a dime, or either way, there's going to be millions in legal fees racked up just from this, in addition to everything else that's already gone on. So big ass mess, and it's going to drag out as long as it takes. And I'm sure Michigan State fans are thrilled by that.
That's right. I didn't not bring it up because I'm just trying to hide what's going on at the university. No, it's pretty well documented that every single person that has at least some internet connection knows the story about all this. It's just I didn't care to talk about it for the 57th time, and I'm sure the listeners and the viewers they A, know what's going on already, and B, to just are ready to move on to the next chapter. But Matt, it's been awesome having you back on the show. I really cannot thank you enough for your time, your knowledge. Anything you want to plug here before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your week here?
Oh, anything to plug? Let's see. Well, I was quoted in the new lawsuit, and I've been responsible for getting somebody sued and getting a lawyer sued over the course of my time at as a Michigan State beat writer. So I'm just checking off different little weird career notes to
That's impressive.
Weird things. Yeah, when you manage to get a lawyer sued ridiculously, that's always a fun thing. But that was a few years back. So anywho, that's all I got.
All right.
Nothing really to plug. Go to mlive.com/Spartans. How about that?
That's a great pelt to have on your wall, though. That's unique. That is unique. Don't talk to a lot of people that has that on their resume. So well done, I guess, in an odd way. But folks, we will be back tomorrow. You already know it's Locked On Spartans. We do this 5 days a week. Until next time, hey, let's take care of yourselves. Have a great day ahead. Love you all. Go green.